Go.
All right, this is our presentation. It is the comparative anatomy of the frog versus the snail and the rat versus the snail. I'm Pranav Vishnu.
I'm Hudson Pimentel.
I'm Pablo Amaro.
I'm Tyler.
Go.
Our group, we have the bullfrog. It belongs to the Animalia kingdom, the phylum, which is the Chordata, the class, which is the Amphibia, the order is Anura, and the family is the Ranida. Genus is Lithobates, and the species Lithopae capibinis.
So this is what we're comparing it to, the snail, the common garden snail, or the Conu aspersum. It's from the kingdom Animalia. The phylum differs from the frog, it's a mollusca. The class is Gastropoda, order is Silomophora. The family is Helidaceae, and the genus is Cornu, and species is Conu aspersum.
Then we have the rat.
Go.
All right, then we have the rat, that is part of the kingdom of Animalia, the phylum that is Chordata, the class that is Mammalia. So we have the Rodidian, that is their order, the family that is Morida, and then the genus Rattus, the species is Rattus norbicus.
Go.
All right, so this is where they diverge evolutionarily. They both diverged around 560 million years ago in the class Nephrozoa. Our snail is a protostome, which means its mouth developed first in embryonic development, while our frog is a deuterostome, which means its anus developed first. That is the same for the rat and the snail when we compare them. They both diverge at Nephrozoa 560 million years ago, and the snail is still a protostome, and the rat is a deuterostome.
Go.
All right, so this is the digestive system of our frog. Our frog has a large tongue and large mouth because it generally uses its sticky tongue to grab insects and then pull it into its mouth whole. It has a large esophagus, so it can swallow these insects directly into the stomach. The stomach has strong digestive acids, so it can break down these whole insects without much manual crunching. And then it passes into the small intestine. The small intestine uses bile, which is produced in the liver, then sent to the gallbladder, and then sent to the small intestine to break down the lipids in these animals. And then, that's the end of the digestive system.
Okay, I'm going to talk about circulatory and respiratory system. Within the respiratory system, we do have the lung and the semi-permeable skin, which help the frog to do the gas exchange. We can see at the vessel, we're going to see the blue, which is help to bring the blood from the organ back to the heart, which is the deoxygenated blood, and the red one, which is the oxygenated blood, which comes from the heart to the organs of the frog. I'm going to talk about the nervous system of the frog. Right here, the spinal cord, which connect to the brain of the frog, which around here, and they do one of the sensing organ of the frog, which is the eyes. They sense the light.
All right, so we're talking about the reproductive and the excretory system. The frog has a reproductive system, which consists of these eggs or these ovaries, which pass through these oviducts. Frogs generally reproduce externally, which means they release the eggs through their cloaca, unfertilized, and then the male frog comes and releases its sperm onto it to fuse the gametes. The frog's excretory system generally consists of the large intestine and the cloaca, where food passes through the large intestine and goes through the cloaca. An interesting fact about frogs is they have a cloaca, which is where both reproductory material and excretory material pass through the same hole. All right, so this is how the frog locomotes. The frog has very strong hind legs, which are powered by very strong muscles. These are the abdominal muscles we uncovered. They were very strong, very hard to cut through. And the musculature gets instructions on what to do through the nervous system. It gets directions from the brain, which passes to the nervous system, which then passes to the peripheral nervous system, which sends signals back and forth. And this frog, because it needs to catch its prey and it needs to run from predators, has a very strong nervous system with very fast reflexes.
Go.
Human and frog share many features with all the other tetrapod, but they also share a feature that is less common. They have no tail based on the tree of Chordata, and given humans are mammal, what can you say about the absence of tail in both frogs and humans?
Frogs and humans are both chordata, which means they both have to have a post-anal tail. A similarity between humans and frogs is we both have them during the developmentary period. The humans have a tail in the embryo, and the frogs have tails as tadpoles. And we both lose these tails as we mature slowly. And basically, we both convergently evolve into finding tails not useful, but they still exist in the embryo and at a developmental stage. because they're both like useful because they're both passed down from a common ancestor.
Arbitrary limbless animal is found in several groups of tetrapod, for instance, the Gymnophions and Caecilians, which are amphibians and therefore closely related to frogs, look like big earthworms.
This is an example of convergent evolution, where lots of animals which used to have lots of limbs found a good way for them to escape from predators would be by burrowing into the ground. And it's found that the smaller your limbs are, the easier it is to burrow because stuff isn't getting in the way. So lots of these animals convergently evolved away from having limbs so that they could better escape from predators. And that's why these don't share a common ancestor, but they all have similar traits.
Okay. What is the group name Tetrapoda referred to if several tetrapod are limbless?
The group name Tetrapoda refers to having 4 legs, and this seems like a misnomer because lots of tetrapods are limbless, but this just means that they have an ancestor that at one point had 4 legs. This means they all diverge from an evolutionary ancestor which had what was a tetrapoda. And now, based on the tree of chordatas, and given that you know that snakes are reptiles, what can you say about the origin of apody and tetrapods?
Based on the phylogenetic tree, the snake, which is really close related to the lizard, which fully developed 4 limbs, and even though that they're really close related and have common ancestor, but snake doesn't have limbs, so that snake go over an adaptation which evolves them to fit into the environment, increase the fitness of the generation.
The vast majority of the embryos of frogs deposited in aquatic habitats are lost for reproduction. Either they die or they are eaten by predators. Why do you think that natural selection can explain that? In some species of frogs, the female keeps the embryo in the skin of her back until they can survive on their own.
So the frog that keep their embryos on the back of them to increase the survival rate of the next generation, as well as increase the fitness, because to prevent them from a predator as well as biochemical environment, they also give them enough opportunity to grow old enough to survive on their own.
Finally, viviparous species of amphibians are rare. One of those rare cases is a salamander that lives in high altitude in the European Alps. Given that the gestation period of this species may last up to 4 years, what would you say the species is adapted for?
So because of the gestation period of this species lasts up to 4 years, this helps them to grow old enough, which they can survive on their own. They can have enough nutrition during the embryo stage, and the female can help them to prevent out of the predators as well as the hunger and predator, and also the harsh environment.
All right, so we're comparing and contrasting between the bullfrog and the garden snail. One thing we can find that they both have in common is bilateral symmetry, which means you could cut them in half and find that both sides are mirror images of each other. They both have a full digestive system, which means they both take in food through the mouth, they both process it, and then they both excrete it. And they both have some sort of structure for mechanical breakdown. Bullfrogs are some of the few frogs that have actual teeth, and snails have a rhodota, which is a tongue-like substance which has like chitinous spikes that helps for breaking down leaves. The difference between the bullfrog and the garden snail would be the bullfrog has a closed circulatory system, while the garden snail has an open circulatory system. A closed circulatory system would be where gases are directly passed to the organs through capillaries. And an open circulatory system would be where the hemolymph simply bathes the organs and they pass directly through diffusion. The bullfrog is a vertebrate, while the garden snail is an invertebrate. The bullfrog is a deuterostome, which means its anus developed first, while the garden snail is a protostome, which means its mouth developed first. The bullfrog is a carnivore, which means it's evolutionary fast, so it can catch prey and escape from predators. While the garden snail is a herbivore, and since plants don't move, they can move slowly, which helps them preserve energy. And if they encounter predators, all they have to do is get in their shell and hide. What is the main function of the protective layers of mucus around the fertilized eggs?
So the layer of mucus help the egg of the snail to prevent from the loss of moisturization and increase the ability to survive within the dry land, as well as prevent them from predator, as well as that's it.
Okay, how can natural selection explain the presence of a pulmonary cavity in land snails and slugs, given that most poso branches are marine and have gills in their pallial cavity?
they both developed from the marine snail. So they used to have a paleo cavity, which helped them to diffuse the oxygen into their body. But they slowly moved from a marine land to the dry land. So they slowly evolved and lose the paleo cavity and develop the lung, pulmonary cavity.
Most of them have a pulmonary cavity and need to go back to the water surface to renew the air in their lungs. Several authors have argued that the presence of a lung in hydrophilia indicates that they had terrestrial ancestors. How would you test this hypothesis?
We can test this hypothesis by doing the DNA sequencing. We can compare between the terrestrial ancestor snail with the marine-like snail ancestor. So which one is closer, we can say that the hypothesis is wrong or right.
So this is our conclusion of our comparison between the snail and the frog, and we just found that snails and frogs are very different evolutionarily. They both evolved at different times. They both face very different evolutionary pressures and like modes of nourishment. Snails are invertebrate mollusks, while frogs are amphibious vertebrates. And one like common adaptation is that they both live on land, so they both have like a sort of lung system. And, but otherwise, they're very different, and this just highlights the extreme flexibility of evolution, how amazing of a process it is that it can develop such like different solutions to such like different ecological niches that exist on Earth.
Then we have the digestive system for the rat. The rat uses its mouth to break down the food. Then from the mouth, it goes all the way from the mouth to the stomach, which helps to break down the food with the acid that it has. Then it moves to the liver. The liver takes all the proteins, everything that it needs to break down. Then it moves to the upper the intestine, then all the way to the lower intestine, sorry. And then from there, it goes to the excretory system, which is expelled by the anus.
All right, right here we have the heart and the lungs, which is protected by the thoracic cavity. And right here we have the genitals. This sac right here is the testicles.
And then we have the locomotion system. Well, basically the rats, we all know the rats move based on 4 legs. So they have 4 legs that help them move around, climb, and also they are able to balance thanks to the tail. And also they are able to do a bipedal stand, which means they balance on 2 legs like us, mammals, and then they are able to grab stuff with their hands and all that.
Amazing.
You pause.
No, go.
Okay, then we have the rat. Can you read the question first?
All right.
Question over there?
Based on the tree of chordatas, where are rats placed and what lineage shares a common ancestry with the snail?
The rat and the snail diverged from each other 560 million years ago from the lineage of Neprozoa.
What does the group name Anemone? Amniota refer to? How does it relate to the anatomy of rats?
Well, it basically refers that the clay, it belongs to the clay of vertebrates that develop an embryo in the early stage of the development of an offspring. So it basically says that the rat, it creates a protective embryo around the offspring at the early stages. It's mostly shared by most mammals, birds, and reptiles.
Rats and humans are mammals and we share many features. There's one trait that we do not share is the presence of a tail. Are there any rodents that do not have a tail? How about other tailless mammals? Some animals in that area for the tailless rodents include the vole, capybara, pike, shrew, and other variants of rats. Some tailless mammals are gorillas, orangutans, and of course humans. How does natural selection possibly explain how some rat species is like burrowing or nesting rats keep their young protected in protected environments until they are mature enough to survive on their own? And this is because of a behavioral instinct that they developed from distant ancestors. Viperous species are common among mammals, including rats, given that gestation periods in rats is much shorter than in humans. And so what might be said about how rats are adapted for environments that require rapid reproduction. And this is because that with more offspring, they are more likely to survive and reproduce, thus becoming more survivally fit. So some similarities that both the rat and the snail have is that they are bilaterally symmetrical. They have a full digestive system, and they have a full nervous system. Some differences that the rat has is that they have a closed circulatory system. They're omnivores. They have an endoskeleton, meaning that they have bones covered by muscles. They're vertebrate, and they have the progae, which basically means that they have fur. But in comparison, the snail has an open circulatory system. They're herbivores. They have an exoskeleton, which means that they have a shell, and they're invertebrates.
Okay, then we have for the conclusion, and that is basically just wrapping it up what he said. It says that the rat and the snail share some common structure similarities, like bilateral symmetry, that it means that if you cut them from the half, it's gonna be like a mirror image. And also they have a complete digestive system, like he previously mentioned. They digest, they break down everything from the food, they get the nutrients, and they excrete everything else. And then they also have some key difference, like including different diets. Like the rat is an omnivore creature, which means it can eat plants or meat or different type of creatures, like small animals or insects. And also the snail is only a herbivore. It only eats plants. And then we have different type of circulatory systems, like the closed, that is the rat one, and the open one, that is the snail one. That basically the open one is pure diffusion for the skin, and the closest one is the one that we have, that is basically like the capillaries one. And then we have different skeletal structures. That for the rat is a vertebrate like us, we have a column and everything. And then the invertebrates, who doesn't have a column and it doesn't have like internal bone structure, like if the structure of the animal is stable, and that's it. And then we have all the reference over here, if you need it. And that's pretty much it. Thank you for your attention.
So,